The thing about being married to someone for 15 years is that you start to believe you know them. You start to think their little cruelties are just personality quirks, their casual dismissals are just stress from work. You convince yourself that the woman who once laughed at your jokes still finds you amusing, even when she's laughing at you instead of with you. I learned how wrong I was on a Tuesday night at Chez Laurent, the kind of overpriced French place where the waiters speak with fake accents and the wine costs more than my first car payment. Oliver's been so distracted lately, Emily was saying to her friends, twirling her glass of Bordeaux like she was conducting an orchestra. I swear, sometimes I think he's living in another dimension entirely. Tara giggled, that annoying sound she made when she thought she was being clever. Well, you know what they say about tech guys. All brains, no social skills. That's generous, Emily replied, not even glancing my way. At this point, I'm wondering if there are any brains left at all. The table erupted in laughter. Veronica nearly choked on her salmon, and Julia, sweet, quiet Julia, looked uncomfortable but said nothing. I sat there, credit card already out to pay for this delightful evening, and felt something shift inside me. Not anger, exactly. Something colder. You know what, ladies? I said, standing up and dropping $300 on the table. This has been enlightening, truly. Emily finally looked at me, her perfectly sculpted eyebrows raised. Where are you going? Home. Apparently, I need to work on those social skills. I walked out of Chez Laurent with my wife's laughter following me into the parking lot. The October air was crisp, and I could smell winter coming. Change was in the air, and I had no idea how right I was. The drive home gave me 20 minutes to think, which was about 19 minutes too many. Our house sat on Maple Street like a monument to suburban success. Colonial style, perfectly manicured lawn, 3-car garage. Emily had insisted on the neighborhood because it sends the right message. I was starting to understand exactly what message that was. I poured myself a scotch, the good stuff Emily bought for entertaining clients, and settled into my home office. The house felt different somehow, like I was seeing it through new eyes. The photos on the mantel showed a progression of our marriage, young and happy, then formal and distant. When had we stopped looking at each other in pictures? My phone buzzed. A text from Tara, of all people. Oliver, I need to talk to you. It's important. I stared at the message for a long moment. Tara had never texted me directly. In 15 years of marriage, I could count our one-on-one conversations on one hand. What about? I typed back. Not over text. Can you meet me tomorrow? Coffee shop on 5th Street, 2 p.m.? Something in my gut told me this wasn't about planning Emily's surprise birthday party. Fine, see you there. I finished my scotch and went to bed, listening to Emily come home an hour later, giggling with someone on the phone. She slipped into bed without a word, and I pretended to be asleep. Before we dive deeper into this story, I have one small request. Please subscribe, drop a like, comment, and hit that hype button to boost this channel so more people can discover these incredible Reddit stories. The next day dragged by like a root canal. I work as a senior project manager for TechFlow Solutions. Not glamorous, but it pays well and keeps my brain engaged. We develop software for small businesses, the kind of unglamorous back-end stuff that makes the world run but never gets headlines. My colleague Jake stopped by my desk around noon. You look like someone stole your lunch money. Just thinking about things, I said, not looking up from my code review. Dangerous habit. What kind of things? Jake was one of those naturally curious people who somehow managed to be nosy without being annoying. We'd worked together for 8 years, and he had a talent for reading people that would have made him a fortune as a therapist. Marriage things. Ah, he perched on the edge of my desk. The kind that require alcohol to discuss? The kind that require lawyers. Jake whistled low. That bad? I don't know yet, but I'm about to find out. The coffee shop on 5th Street was one of those aggressively hip places with exposed brick and baristas who looked like they'd rather be anywhere else. Tara was already there when I arrived, hunched over a laptop in the corner booth. She looked nervous, which was unusual. Tara's default setting was smug confidence. Thanks for coming, she said as I sat down. This is a first, I replied, ordering a black coffee from the disinterested teenager behind the counter. What's so important it couldn't wait? Tara fidgeted with her phone case. I've been wanting to tell you something for months, but I didn't know how, and I wasn't sure if I should get involved, but after last night... Just say it, Tara. She took a deep breath. Emily's having an affair. The words hung in the air between us like smoke. I felt strangely calm, like she'd just told me the weather forecast. With who? Dean Walsh. You know, the real estate guy. Drives the black Range Rover. I knew Dean. Flashy, loud, the kind of guy who wore expensive suits to hide his cheap personality. He'd been at a few of our parties, always making jokes about flipping houses and hearts. I'd thought he was just obnoxious. Apparently, he was also predictable. How long? I asked. 6 months, maybe more. They're not exactly subtle about it. Tara leaned forward. Oliver, there's more. I think they're planning something to do with your company. Now that got my attention. What kind of something? I don't know the details, but I heard Emily on the phone talking about shares and buyouts. She mentioned your name and Dean's company in the same conversation. I sipped my coffee and processed this information. Emily knew enough about my work to be dangerous, and Dean had the kind of money that could cause real problems. The pieces were starting to form a picture I didn't like. Why are you telling me this? I asked. Tara looked genuinely uncomfortable. Because you don't deserve this, and because Emily's been treating everyone like garbage lately. She thinks she's better than all of us. She thinks she's better than me too, apparently. Oliver, I'm sorry. I should have told you sooner. I finished my coffee and stood up. No, you told me exactly when I needed to hear it. Thanks, Tara. Walking back to my car, I felt something I hadn't experienced in years. Clarity. The fog of routine and assumption was lifting, and I could see my situation with perfect, crystalline focus. Emily wanted out of our marriage, but she wanted to take everything with her. Dean was helping her, probably with promises of a better life funded by my hard work. They thought I was just another clueless husband, too distracted by code and spreadsheets to notice what was happening in my own home. They were about to learn how wrong they were. That evening, Emily announced she was going on a business trip over the weekend. Where to? I asked, not looking up from my laptop. Portland, client presentation. Which client? A pause. Morrison Industries. You don't know them. I nodded, like this made perfect sense. Emily worked in PR for a mid-sized firm downtown. Morrison Industries was actually one of my company's clients, and I happened to know they were based in Atlanta, not Portland. Strike one. When do you leave? Friday morning, back Sunday night. I'll miss you, I lied. Friday morning, I watched Emily pack her bag with unusual care. Designer clothes, expensive lingerie, the kind of outfit you wear when you want to impress someone. She kissed my cheek goodbye, a gesture that felt like signing a business contract. Have fun in Portland, I said. I will. After she left, I sat in my kitchen with a cup of coffee and my laptop, planning my next moves like a chess match. The first rule of project management is to gather all available information before making decisions. The second rule is to always have a backup plan. I started with the obvious. Our joint accounts, shared assets, the paper trail of our marriage. Emily had been busy. Small withdrawals, transferred funds. Money moved in ways that looked innocent individually but formed a pattern when viewed together. She was building a nest egg, probably with Dean's advice. Next, I checked our home security system. We'd installed cameras 2 years ago after a break-in down the street. Emily had forgotten about them, or maybe she just assumed I was too trusting to check the footage. The recordings from the past month made for interesting viewing. Dean had been a frequent visitor, always when I was at work. They were comfortable together, familiar in ways that spoke of intimacy. But the most damning evidence was in Emily's home office. She'd left her laptop open, probably in her rush to pack. Her email was still logged in, and her recent messages told a story that made my stomach turn. Dean wasn't just helping her leave me, they were planning to destroy me first. The emails laid out a scheme that was both simple and vicious. Dean's company would make a hostile takeover bid for TechFlow Solutions, using inside information Emily had gathered about our client contracts and financial situation. In the chaos that followed, I'd lose my job and my stock options. Emily would file for divorce, claiming I'd hidden assets and been financially irresponsible. By the time the dust settled, I'd be left with nothing while they rode off into the sunset with my life's work. It was elegant, really, and it would have worked if they hadn't underestimated one crucial factor. I wasn't the passive victim they thought I was. I spent Friday afternoon making phone calls. The first was to my lawyer, David Chen, a sharp, no-nonsense attorney who'd handled our house purchase and business contracts. The second was to my financial advisor. The third was to Jake. I need a favor, I told him. Name it. How would you feel about becoming a business partner? By Sunday evening, the groundwork was laid. I'd transferred my TechFlow shares to a trust controlled by Jake, moved our joint savings into accounts Emily couldn't access, and put our house into a legal structure that would protect it from any divorce proceedings. Everything was documented, legal, and completely above board. When Emily came home from her business trip, she was glowing with satisfaction. She talked about Portland like she'd actually been there, describing restaurants I knew she'd never visited and meetings that never happened. I listened and nodded, playing the role of the oblivious husband one last time. "How was your weekend?" she asked. "Quiet. Productive. I got a lot of thinking done." "About what?" "The future. Our future." She smiled, and for a moment I saw the woman I'd married. Beautiful, confident, completely sure of her power over me. It was almost a shame to disappoint her. Monday morning, Emily tried to use our joint credit card for her usual coffee run. It was declined. She called me from the coffee shop, confused and slightly irritated. Oliver, there's something wrong with the card." "Is there? Let me check." I pretended to look into it while she waited on the line. That's strange. The account shows it was closed on Friday." "Closed? Why would it be closed?" "I have no idea. Maybe you should come home and we can figure it out together." The drive from downtown to our house usually took Emily 20 minutes. She made it in 12. I was waiting in the kitchen when she burst through the front door, her face flushed with anger and confusion. "Oliver, what the hell is going on? None of my cards work and I can't access our savings account." "That's odd," I said, sipping my coffee. "Have you tried calling the bank?" "Of course I called the bank. They said the accounts were restructured on Friday. What does that even mean?" I set down my mug and looked at her, really looked at her, for the first time in months. She was still beautiful, still poised, but there was something desperate in her eyes now. The confidence was cracking. "It means I know about Dean." The color drained from her face. For a moment, neither of us spoke. "I don't know what you're talking about," she said finally. "Sure you do. 6 months of afternoon visits while I was at work. The Portland trip that was actually a weekend at his lake house. The emails about tech flow and hostile takeovers." I stood up slowly. "Did you really think I was that oblivious, Emily?" She tried to rally, to summon that imperious tone she used when she wanted to end arguments through sheer force of personality. "Oliver, you're being paranoid. Dean is just a friend, and I really was in Portland on business. Morrison Industries is based in Atlanta." Another crack in the facade. "I misspoke. It was a different client." "Which one?" "I don't have to explain myself to you." "Actually, you do. We're married, remember? Though apparently you've been working on changing that." Emily sat down heavily at our kitchen table, the fight going out of her all at once. "How long have you known?" "Since Tuesday. Tara told me about the affair. I figured out the rest myself." "Tara?" Emily's voice was sharp with betrayal. "That little... what? Friend? Isn't that what she was supposed to be?" Emily laughed, but there was no humor in it. "None of them are friends, Oliver. They're all just waiting for someone to fall so they can feel better about their own pathetic lives." "Is that what you think of me too? Someone pathetic whose fall makes you feel better?" She looked at me for a long moment, and I saw something like regret in her eyes. "No, you were just safe, comfortable. But I want more than comfortable." "So you decided to take everything I've worked for and give it to Dean?" "It wasn't supposed to hurt you. The plan was for you to land on your feet, maybe start something new." "How generous. And if I didn't land on my feet?" She shrugged. "You're smart. You'd figure something out." The casual cruelty of it took my breath away. This wasn't passion or desperation. It was cold, calculated indifference. I'd been married to a stranger. "Well," I said, "I did figure something out." Over the next hour, I explained exactly what I'd figured out. The trust that now controlled our assets, the legal protections I'd put in place, the evidence I'd gathered of her affair, and the planned corporate sabotage. With each revelation, Emily grew paler and more desperate. "You can't do this," she said finally. "Half of everything is mine. Half of what we built together, yes, but you forfeited that when you decided to destroy me. Check the prenup, Emily. Adultery voids your claim to marital assets." "We don't have a prenup." I smiled for the first time in days. "We do now. You signed it last month when you thought you were signing insurance papers." The look of horror on her face was almost worth everything I'd been through. Almost. "That's fraud," she whispered. "No, that's preparation. Everything was legal, witnessed, and properly filed. David Chen is very thorough." Emily tried calling Dean, but his phone went straight to voicemail. She tried calling her lawyer, but it was after hours. She tried calling her friends, but somehow word had already gotten out about her situation. Tara, it turned out, had a bigger mouth than I'd realized. "What do you want?" Emily asked finally. "I want you to leave, tonight. Take whatever clothes you can carry and go stay with Dean, or your mother, or anyone who'll have you. This is my house, too." "Not anymore. Check the deed." She did, pulling up the county records on her phone. Our house was now owned by the Oliver Cross Family Trust, with me as the sole trustee. Legal, binding, and completely out of her reach. "I'll fight this," she said. "I'll take you to court and tell them what you did." What did I do, exactly? Protect my assets when I discovered my wife was planning to steal them? Move my money when I found out she was committing adultery? Any judge in the state would have done the same thing. Emily stared at me like she was seeing me for the first time. "You're not the man I married." "No," I agreed. "I'm better." She left that night with 2 suitcases and her car. I watched from the window as she loaded her things, her movements sharp and angry. She looked back at the house once before driving away, and I thought I saw tears on her face. But it might have been the streetlight. The next few days passed in a strange calm. I went to work, came home, cooked dinner for one. The house felt different. Not empty, exactly, but peaceful. Like a weight had been lifted. Jake stopped by Wednesday evening with takeout Chinese and a bottle of wine. "How are you holding up?" he asked. "Better than I expected. It's quiet." "Quiet's good. Gives you time to think?" "I've been doing too much thinking lately." "Or maybe just the right amount." Jake opened the wine and poured 2 glasses. "So what's the plan now?" "Honestly, I don't know. For 15 years, everything I did was part of a we. Now it's just me." "That's not necessarily a bad thing." "No," I agreed. "It's not." We ate in comfortable silence. 2 middle-aged men contemplating the ruins of what I'd thought was my life. But ruins could be rebuilt, and sometimes the new structure was stronger than the old one. "There's something else," Jake said as we finished the lo mein. "Dean Walsh called the office today. He wanted to set up a meeting about acquisition opportunities." "Did he now?" "I told him to go through proper channels, submit a formal proposal, financial statements, the works." "And?" "He got angry. Said he had inside information that we were in financial trouble and he was offering us a way out." I laughed. Actually laughed. For the first time in weeks. He really thought it would be that easy. "Apparently. What do you want me to tell him if he calls back?" "Tell him we're not interested. Tell him we know exactly what kind of man he is. Tell him Oliver Cross sends his regards." Jake raised his glass. "To new beginnings." "To old endings," I corrected, and we drank. Thursday morning brought the first real test of my resolve. Emily's lawyer called. Not Emily herself, but her attorney. A woman named Patricia Hoffman with a voice like broken glass. "Mr. Cross, I represent your wife in the matter of your separation." "There's no separation," I said. "There's adultery, fraud, and attempted corporate espionage, but no separation." "My client disputes those allegations." "Your client can dispute gravity if she wants. It won't change the facts." "Mr. Cross, I think we should meet to discuss a reasonable settlement." "Here's a reasonable settlement. Emily gets nothing. Dean gets nothing. I keep what I earned and built, and they can explain to their friends why their little scheme failed." "That's not how divorce works in this state. It is when there's evidence of adultery and financial conspiracy. Would you like me to send you the documentation?" A pause. "What kind of documentation?" "Emails, photos, financial records, witness statements. Everything your client thought I was too stupid to find." Another pause, longer this time. "I'll need to review these materials before we proceed." "Of course. I'll have my attorney send them over this afternoon." After I hung up, I called David Chen and gave him the go-ahead to release everything. If Emily wanted to fight, she'd get a fight. But it would be on my terms, with my evidence, in my time. The response came faster than I'd expected. Patricia Hoffman called back Friday morning, her voice noticeably less aggressive. "Mr. Cross, after reviewing the materials your attorney provided, I think my client would be interested in discussing an amicable resolution." "I'm listening." "She's willing to waive any claim to marital assets in exchange for a clean separation. No alimony, no property division, no ongoing financial obligations." "What about the house?" "She understands that's no longer an option." "And Dean's business plans?" "My client has no involvement in Mr. Walsh's business affairs." I almost laughed. Emily was throwing Dean under the bus to save herself. Honor among thieves, indeed. "Fine. Draw up the papers. But I want it all in writing. The adultery, the conspiracy, everything. If she tries to come back later claiming I coerced her, I want a legal record of exactly why she lost everything. That's unusual. So is planning to destroy your husband's livelihood for your boyfriend's benefit. Unusual times call for unusual measures." The papers were signed the following Tuesday. Emily came to David Chen's office looking like she'd aged 5 years in 2 weeks. She wore a simple black dress instead of her usual designer outfits, and her hands shook slightly as she signed each page. "You know this will ruin me," she said as we finished. "You ruined yourself. I just made sure you didn't take me with you." "What about Dean? What about him? Are you going to destroy him too?" I considered the question. Dean had been the architect of the scheme against me, but he was also a coward who'd abandoned Emily the moment things got difficult. His punishment was having to live with himself. "Dean's not my problem anymore. He's yours." Emily looked at me with something that might have been respect. "I underestimated you." "Yes, you did." She left without another word, and I watched her go with a mixture of relief and sadness. 15 years of marriage, reduced to signatures on legal documents. But some endings were necessary to make room for new beginnings. That evening, I sat in my kitchen now, and opened a bottle of the good wine Emily had been saving for special occasions. This seemed special enough. Jake called around 9. "How did it go?" "It's over. She signed everything." "How do you feel?" "Free," I said, and realized I meant it. "Want some company? I was thinking about stopping by with pizza. Actually, I think I'd like to be alone tonight. But thanks." Rain check then. "And Oliver?" "Yeah?" "You did the right thing. Not the easy thing, but the right thing." After we hung up, I walked through the house that was finally completely mine. Each room held memories, some good, some painful, all part of a chapter that was now closed. Tomorrow I'd start writing a new one. I poured another glass of wine and stepped out onto the back deck. The October air was crisp and clean, full of possibilities. Somewhere across town, Emily was probably crying into her pillow at Dean's place, wondering how her perfect plan had gone so wrong. Somewhere else, Dean was probably planning his next scheme, his next victim. But here, in my house, in my life, there was peace. I'd learned something important over the past 2 weeks. The difference between being alone and being lonely. I'd been lonely for years in my marriage, surrounded by people who saw me as a means to an end. Now I was alone, but I wasn't lonely. I was free. The wine was excellent. A 2015 Bordeaux that Emily had been saving for her promotion. She wouldn't be needing it now. I raised my glass to the night sky and smiled. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, new opportunities, new chances to build something better than what I'd lost. But tonight, I was content to sit in the darkness and savor my victory. It had been a good week for justice.